Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show engineered to give you the strategic insight needed to lead in the fast-moving commercial world. Today, our mission is, well, it's sharp and focused. We are navigating the total economic overhaul driven by the everything as a service, or SaaS economy. For commercial executives like you listening, this isn't just about, updating a pricing sheet. It's about a complete and fundamental restructuring of how revenue is generated, managed, and crucially sustained. Our stack of sources makes it incredibly clear. We've absolutely left the transactional economy in the rearview mirror. The goal today is no longer the one-time sale. It's the continuous sustainable creation of value, and that demands a massive pivot in leadership, finance, and operations.
That's exactly right. That's the core of it. The SaaS model represents a real paradigm shift. We're moving from selling discrete, fixed products to delivering continuous, flexible, outcome-oriented services. It demands that organizations start focusing solely on features and specs and start focusing on measurable results delivered over time. Honestly, for any business aiming for long-term viability, this is the strategic mandate now.
And we have a pretty comprehensive roadmap laid out for us today. We're going to unpack the architecture of these new revenue models, moving all the way up the spectrum to outcome-based selling, which seems to be the highest form of alignment. Then we'll look at the operational engine, how the quote-to-cash process, QTC, must be totally re-engineered for this digital age. And finally, we absolutely must examine the leader at the center of all this, how the chief revenue officer transforms into the indispensable chief relationship orchestrator. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the strategic mandate and really understanding the financial forces driving this immense change.
Okay, so the initial commercial pivot of ZES, it's entirely dictated by the financial relationship with the client. Historically, as you know, the client made an upfront investment, an outright purchase, or maybe a fixed multi-year license. The ZaaS model completely dismantles that rigid structure. It replaces it with models based on flexible consumption or usage.
And the immediate benefit to the client here is profound, right? I mean, when they buy a physical product or a perpetual license, they're usually treating that as a capital expenditure, CapEx, on their balance sheet. By shifting to a service model, their spending moves to operational expenditure, OpEx. That's a huge distinction.
It is. It makes the service financially safer to acquire, and it massively improves their expense model because, well, they can pay as they go rather than carrying those sunk costs. It's much more flexible.
But it's more manageable.
Yeah. Exactly. So this shift from CapEx to OpEx is kind of the gateway, but the ZaaS structure itself, it's becoming incredibly complex. We've moved far beyond the, let's say, generic cloud offerings like SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS. Those are still the foundation, sure, but the market is evolving into highly specialized, granular commercial offerings, tailored to incredibly specific needs.
Yeah, our source material gave some fantastic examples of how deep this granularity goes. And this is where it stops being just an IT problem and starts becoming a massive commercial challenge, isn't it? We're talking about things like containers as a service, CAFS, which is about letting clients manage and deploy sophisticated applications in these portable cloud environments.
And even more granularly, you have function as a service, FACE. Think of FACE as abstracting away the complex server and infrastructure management entirely. The customer simply runs small snippets of code in response to specific events, like processing a file upload, without ever needing to provision or manage a server, virtual or physical. It's essentially paying for processing time in microseconds, tiny amounts.
Hold on, just for the commercial executives listening who aren't maybe deep in the IT procurement weeds, explain that phase complexity challenge. If my client is paying for a few microseconds of processing time, what does that do to my sales and quoting teams? How do they even handle that?
Well, that is precisely the commercial challenge. That granularity means you simply cannot sell generic bundles anymore. It doesn't work. You must design packages that allow clients to consume exactly the granular service they need, maybe down to the function level. And this immediately elevates the complexity of configuration, pricing, and quoting CPQ to an entirely new stratosphere. Your CPQ system suddenly has to handle not just large fixed SKUs, but a potentially infinite combination of configurable usage-based options. The days of simple list pricing are emphatically over.
Wow. So the quote-to-cash process becomes immediately stressed right from the very start.
Instantly, yeah. Hashtag tag 1.2. Economic drivers and innovation acceleration.
Okay, so we know the financial and technical architecture is changing. But what are the buyers demanding that forces this change? The sources highlight three primary forces, and they represent a real shift in commercial power, it seems.
They do. The first two are pretty straightforward. Total cost of ownership, TCO, optimization buyers want that flexible consumption to reduce capital outlay and make acquisition financially safer. We just talked about that. And second, market agility and SpeedZez offers inherent scalability, which allows rapid deployment of new tech and quick adaptation to competitive changes. That speed is just vital today.
But the third one, this feels like the biggest strategic shift, and it's critical for every CRO listening to internalize this: the ROI-driven mandate.
Yes, this is the big one. Customers are under intense pressure to justify every single dollar spent. They have moved entirely past just comparing product specifications. They now prioritize and frankly demand solutions that not only promise but can guarantee and verify a measurable return on investment. They are buying demonstrable impact, not just access to a capability.
So it's about proving the value, not just stating it.
Exactly. That mandate for verifiable value delivery is the force pushing commercial models toward those outcome-based contracts we'll discuss later. And beyond that, the deepest strategic advantage that ZAS provides to the customer is innovation acceleration. By outsourcing non-strategic, maintenance-heavy functions, things like upgrades, provisioning, patching to external providers, organizations can streamline their own operations.
Which means their internal IT resources, previously tied up just keeping the lights on, can be reallocated to higher value strategic projects. That makes sense.
Right. And that ability to quickly adopt new technologies smooths the road to innovation, leading to faster digital transformation. The speed of that process acceleration, that becomes the ultimate competitive differentiator for the client. And that is what you, the vendor, are ultimately selling, not just software, but their competitive edge.
Okay, that reframes the whole value proposition. So once an organization commits to JAS, they have to actually select the commercial architecture. Our sources reveal a pretty clear spectrum of recurring revenue models, moving from, say, guaranteed access all the way to guaranteed results. Let's start with the access model, subscription.
Yeah, the subscription model is the traditional recurring revenue approach.
Yeah.
Its strength is clear predictability for the vendor, consistent revenue streams, great for internal financial forecasting, and fantastic for locking in those long-term customer relationships. The drawback, however, is that its fixed nature. Well, it might not align perfectly with customer consumption habits. If their usage varies wildly month to month, they might feel they're overpaying when demand is low.
Right, you hear that complaint sometimes. And the counter to that is the consumption or usage-based model. This charges the client only based on the actual utility or value derived, how much they used, how many transactions they processed, something like that.
And the high alignment here is why customers often love it. The vendor's revenue scales directly alongside the customer's growth, and the cost is perfectly tied to the value they feel they're realizing. But, and this is a big but, as a vendor, this introduces massive complications. Pure usage-based pricing creates inherent volatility. It makes accurate budgeting, infrastructure investment, and revenue forecasting incredibly challenging. When you can't predict usage spikes or troughs reliably, it's really hard to scale efficiently without over-provisioning or, worse, under-delivering.
Okay, so if pure subscription is potentially too rigid for the customer and pure consumption is too volatile for the vendor, the only logical conclusion for mature ZASA's organizations seems to be the hybrid imperative.
Absolutely. That's where the market is settling. The strategic choice is combining the two elements. You use subscription minimums, let's say, to ensure necessary revenue predictability and stability. That's your floor. And then you utilize consumption overages to capture flexibility and scale. That's your potential ceiling. This hybridization, it sort of mitigates the major risks of pure volatility while still ensuring the customer pays for the actual value they derive, more or less.
But this hybrid model, that's the one that really requires those sophisticated QTC systems to manage the blending of fixed and variable costs, isn't it?
Precisely. You need systems that can track both components accurately and bill them seamlessly. Now, if the hybrid model is smart, outcome-based selling, OBS, is really the pinnacle of the ZES commercial journey. This is where the commercial focus shifts entirely. Forget product access or service hours. It's about the achievement of measurable, contracted business results. The customer pays only for verifiable cost savings, improved efficiency, or maybe specific achieved business goals. They pay for results, period.
Wow. That necessitates a total transformation in the sales function, doesn't it? The salesperson stops being just a product expert describing features and speeds.
Right. They transform into a strategic business consultant. They absolutely must demonstrate a profound understanding of the prospect's critical business objectives, showing exactly how the vendor solution contributes directly to that measurable, desired outcome.
Yes.
It's a much deeper conversation.
So the salesperson, they're not just pitching anymore.
Right.
They're diagnosing and prescribing solutions tied to outcomes.
Exactly. And the sources confirm this approach builds the strongest, most resilient partnerships, which is really the definition of long-term Zaya success. It fundamentally increases win rates and the average deal value because you are aligning your success directly with the customer's financial destiny. You are no longer talking about transactions. You are discussing shared strategy, shared success.
Okay, but now, when you guarantee an outcome, you're fundamentally changing the risk profile. You mentioned OBS mandates shared risk. But if I'm the vendor, how do I write a contract that protects me when, say, the customer's own internal organizational chaos or perhaps a sudden market shift prevents the outcome from being achieved? Doesn't this put my entire revenue stream at the mercy of my client's poor management potentially? That seems risky.
That is the essential challenge of OBS, and you've hit on the biggest risk factor. The seller implicitly takes responsibility for achieving the measurable result. And yes, that exposure includes factors external to the service itself, market shifts, client organizational changes, you name it. This requires contracts to be highly transparent and flexible. They need to be structured not as like a legal weapon, but as a long-term partnership agreement where risks and rewards are mutually shared. You absolutely must build in contingencies and clear off-ramps based on verifiable external or internal client factors that are genuinely beyond your control. If they fail to provide the necessary resources, for instance, you need a mechanism in the contract to adjust or pause the outcome guarantee. It has to be spelled out.
That makes sense. And crucially, the sources emphasize a critical operational prerequisite for any of this to even work. You cannot sell a guaranteed outcome without first having robust consumption metering in place.
Absolutely impossible. Think of it this way. How can you credibly promise, say, a 20% reduction in customer response time if you don't have the granular real-time data to measure the service inputs, the specific utilization and consumption, and the resulting performance, the outcome itself? Consumption metering provides the essential, verifiable data required to validate performance against the contract terms. It's needed to accurately trigger outcome-based billing and any performance adjustments. If your systems can't track usage in real time accurately, you're essentially selling an aspirational feature, not a truly guaranteed result. The proof is missing.
So the metering underpins the entire promise.
It's the foundation. Without it, OBS is just talk. Hashtag 2.3, strategic pricing and risk exposure.
Okay, so this means pricing must evolve beyond simple capacity metrics, like gigabytes or user seats, to reflect the actual economic impact delivered.
It absolutely must. Pricing tiers have to utilize quantitative, verifiable metrics that directly translate to the customer's desired ROI, things like verifiable transactions process, the measurable efficiency achieved, or the specific volume of resources saved. If the pricing structure doesn't clearly reflect the measured impact, the outcome model instantly falls apart. The customer will always, rightly, demand proof that the price tag aligns with the value delivered.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the operation has to change just as much as the sales pitch. This isn't just a front office thing.
No, it's a complete organizational reset because the stakes change dramatically with the model. We really need to detail how the seller's risk exposure changes across this entire revenue model spectrum. In the old transactional world, the risk was relatively manageable, maybe inventory, obsolescence, or product write-downs. Okay. With subscription, the risk becomes churn and monthly recurring revenue, or MRR attrition. That's the focus. In pure consumption, the risk is those unpredictable usage spikes which strain infrastructure or unpredictable dips that hurt revenue. But when you move to outcome-based selling, the commercial risk exposure becomes the non-achievement of contractual goals. You could deliver the service perfectly, but if the customer doesn't meet the agreed-upon outcome, you potentially don't get paid or get paid less. That is a radically different and frankly potentially existential commercial liability.
Yeah, the stakes are much, much higher. So if ZaaS is the commercial model of continuous value, then quote to cash QTC is the high-speed continuous engine that makes it all run. And we need to be crystal clear that QTC is substantially broader than the traditional order-to-cash O2C, which mainly focuses on, physical or digital order execution. QTC covers the entire life cycle, from the initial configuration of the incredibly complex hybrid quote we talked about, all the way through contract management, dynamic billing, and final revenue recognition. It's end-to-end.
Exactly. QTC is the operational backbone of ZaaS success. An efficient QTC process is absolutely non-negotiable because it's the mechanism that supports omnichannel selling, delivers that high-quality customer experience required for retention and expansion, and ultimately drives profitable recurring revenue growth. In the SaaS world, QTC is no longer a linear sequential process culminating in a single payment. It must be re-engineered into a continuous cyclical orchestration system that constantly monitors usage, adjusts contracts, and rebills dynamically.
Cyclical is the key word there. It never really stops.
It doesn't. It's always running.
Okay, this is where the complexity of the dynamic offerings we just discussed in Section 1 and 2 really hits the technology stack hard. In the transactional world, CPQ was, well, relatively simple selection from a list.
Right. Now, in SaaS, CPQ must configure dynamic, hybrid bundles on the fly. We are talking about combining guaranteed subscription minimums, variable usage caps that might reset monthly, multiple service tiers that could change based on utilization levels, and specific outcome guarantees tied to complex SLAs. It is truly an exponential leap in complexity that demands immediate, robust technological support. Your old CPQ tool probably can't handle this.
So the CPQ tools themselves must be incredibly advanced then. They need to be capable of real-time pricing and applying those nuanced, tiered, and consumption-based structures instantly, accurately. If the client is ready to sign, the quote must perfectly reflect the final contract terms and those expected value metrics tied to the outcome agreement. There's no room for error.
That speed and accuracy are absolutely vital. If the quote generation process is slow or clunky or worse, inaccurate, the entire financial relationship is poisoned before the service even properly starts. An advanced CPQ system isn't just a sales tool anymore. It's a critical financial governance tool. It ensures that every quote is not only attractive to the client, but also profitable and operationally viable for your organization.
It's setting the rules for the entire relationship, right there in the quote.
Precisely. Hashtag TAG 3.3. Dynamic contracts and the billing bottleneck. And this complex configuration flows immediately downstream into a necessary transformation in the contract lifecycle. Traditional contracts, they're static legal documents, signed, filed away, maybe referenced occasionally. SaaS contracts, especially those rooted in outcomes, must be dynamic agreements. They need to function as operational business logic embedded right into the system. They must constantly monitor customer behavior and service performance to trigger payments or usage adjustments in real time based on the agreed rules.
Wait. So you're telling me the contract is essentially code now,
Yeah.
like executable logic. If there's one bug in that CPQ system generating the quote or in the subsequent contract logic that gets created, I could accidentally be giving away millions of dollars in free services. Or, conversely, overbilling and risking a total messy loss of the customer. That sounds terrifying. We need to spend more time on that governance problem.
That is the massive technology governance problem that commercial executives absolutely must face head-on. Since these contracts are functional, executable rule sets, the business logic must be error-free. The risk is profound. A flawed logic or verification mechanism means the organization risks immediate, significant financial or operational liabilities. If the logic is wrong, the billing is wrong, the revenue recognition is wrong, everything downstream breaks.
So therefore, the QTC systems must incorporate robust validation tools. They almost need to act like internal auditors, checking the contract's operational business logic to ensure it's sound before activation.
Exactly. This validation isn't optional. It's fundamental liability management. You have to trust the logic implicitly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And all this complexity funnels directly into the primary QTC bottleneck, the billing and invoicing stage. The shift to hybrid and outcome models replaces simple, fixed billing with massive complexity. You're managing minimum commitments, calculating variable usage based on potentially millions of discrete service events, not thousands, millions applying multi-tiered pricing algorithms, and then making conditional adjustments based on achieved outcomes or specific SLA metrics. This mandates specialized billing platforms capable of handling extremely high transaction volumes and applying those dynamic pricing rules accurately and instantaneously just to maintain cash flow and customer satisfaction. Your standard ERP billing module likely won't cut it.
The scale is just orders of magnitude different.
Completely different.
The sources are absolutely unequivocal on this. ZAC's commercial strategy is financially led, which makes the CFO-CRO partnership completely non-negotiable. They have to be locked at the hip. And commercial leaders must pivot their focus dramatically away from metrics focused mainly on the initial transaction-like annual contract value, ACV, to embrace metrics that capture the long-term value of the relationship.
Yes. The essential metrics now are total contract value, TCV, annual recurring revenue, ARR, and most critically, net revenue retention, NRR. NRR is the new lifeblood of Insac's business. While ACV tells you how good you are at landing a new customer, NR tells you how good you are at keeping them, expanding their usage, upselling, cross-selling, and delivering continuous value. It is the ultimate measure of relationship health and profitability. That's the metric that really matters now.
So this necessitates much more advanced financial modeling, right? It's no longer just historical accounting. It's a strategic requirement for the organization to translate these complex multi-year SaaS deals into accurate booking quota targets for the sales teams. And crucially, ensuring those targets align directly with the organization's overarching margin goals and cash flow metrics.
Precisely. And we absolutely must talk about compliance here. The continuous nature of SaaS delivery, and especially those outcome-based contracts, significantly complicate compliance with global accounting standards like ASC 606 and IFRS 15.
Okay, for the commercial leader listening, what's the practical impact of those standards? Why does this matter beyond the accounting department's headaches?
Oh, it matters intensely because it directly controls when you can recognize revenue. Under these standards, if you promise an outcome and payment is contingent on achieving a specific milestone down the road, you might actually be prevented from recognizing that revenue until that later verifiable milestone is achieved. This can create a really dangerous lag in the profit and loss statement. It could potentially starve the company of recognized earnings, even while cash flow might seem stable. Finance teams need specialized skills to structure these deals correctly from the outset so that the pricing optimizes revenue recognition timing while remaining fully compliant. It's a balancing act. Hashtag TAG 4.2, managing the cash flow transition.
And that is precisely why the CFO-CRO partnership is so non-negotiable. Misalignment on pricing structures, on revenue recognition rules, on contract complexity.
Bill.
It leads directly to courting friction, bureaucratic delays internally, and protracted renegotiations with the customer. If sales quotes something that finance simply can't book compliantly or profitably, the customer experience just dies right there.
A robust, aligned QTC process, jointly owned or at least jointly governed by the CFO and CRO, is really the only mechanism that ensures the seamless buying experience necessary for the core Xaccess strategy of land and expand.
We also have to face the inevitable cash flow problem that comes with this shift, the dreaded valley of death.
Yeah.
That sounds daunting.
It can be. Shifting from large upfront payments, which give you immediate cash, to smaller recurring revenue streams presents a critical cash flow management challenge, especially early on. The valley is that perilous period where the initial organizational investment in delivery infrastructure, in sales enablement, in customer success teams, it often outpaces the recurring revenue being collected from those new contracts. You're spending before you're earning back fully. Financial modeling must quantify the cost to serve, CTS, for these services with surgical precision, ensuring that investments align with projected recurring revenue streams over time. And crucially, quota targets must strategically balance the pursuit of new customers, the logo hunt, with the profitability and expansion potential, the NRR potential of existing accounts. You simply can't afford to land a bad, high cost to serve account that just drains resources while you're in that valley.
Focusing on the right logos becomes even more critical.
Absolutely. Profitable growth, not just any growth. Hashtag TAG 4.3. The evolving CRO mandate and compensation.
This shift fundamentally redefines the mandate of the Chief Revenue Officer, doesn't it? The CRO moves beyond just managing mere quota, that transactional metric, to becoming the Chief Relationship Orchestrator. They become responsible for designing, maintaining, and ultimately profiting from the entire customer experience lifecycle, ensuring continuous value realization for the customer and for the company.
Yes, the core objective shifts entirely from transaction management to designing continuous, valuable experiences. This means the CRO must integrate functions previously seen as separate from core sales, or at least post-sales. Customer success, for example, is no longer just a post-sales cost center. It is the engine of net revenue retention and expansion. It must report functionally, or at least strategically, into the CRO to ensure total alignment on goals and execution. They're key now.
So the CRO has to orchestrate that internal alignment, ensuring seamless transitions from sales, making the initial promise, to delivery, setting up the service correctly, to customer success, actually verifying the value is being achieved. This demands a pretty profound cultural shift too, right? Towards consultative, value-based selling, requiring sales teams to adopt deep listening techniques to accurately identify customer needs and showcase measurable ROI, not just features.
Absolutely. It's a skill shift as much as a structural one. And critically, compensation design must reinforce this long-term outcome-driven mandate. Incentives for the CRO and, frankly, the whole go-to-market team must pivot away from focusing solely on gross bookings or ACV. They need to heavily weight metrics that reflect long-term value, primarily net revenue retention, and the overall profitability of customer cohorts over time.
The sources strongly advocate using strategic tools like equity or long-term incentive plans, LTIPs, tied to multi-year customer performance metrics. That seems logical.
It is. That aligns the CRO's personal financial interest directly with the company's sustainable long-term success. It ensures they're making decisions today that benefit the company 3, 4, 5 years down the line, not just hitting a quarterly bookings number.
Makes sense.
And furthermore, compensation must strategically reward enterprise collaboration. These highly profitable, complex ZSS deals, they are almost always cross-functional efforts involving sales, finance, legal, delivery, product, maybe even marketing. The compensation structure for the CRO, and ideally the rest of the C-suite, must explicitly recognize and reward this collaboration. It helps mitigate those internal conflicts that can undermine the essential alignment required for ZS's success. It's really the final strategic organizational alignment tool you have.
Aligning incentives to align behavior. Classic, but critical here.
Never more critical.
Okay, so the journey to ZaaS success isn't instantaneous, it's phased. It requires continuous evolution in technology, process, and, as we've discussed, culture. The sources provide a useful maturity framework for commercial leaders to kind of gauge their progress.
Yeah, after the initial piloting phase, organizations typically enter the run stage. This usually takes a year or two of really concerted effort. The business in this stage is characterized by delivering multiple ZAG offers successfully, optimizing the basic customer journey, maybe ironing out kinks, and achieving those initial land and expand goals with existing customers. Technologically, this requires having those advanced QTC capabilities we talked about and initial reliable usage metering in place.
Yeah.
You got the basics operational.
The ultimate goal, however, is the fly stage. This represents the mature, optimized phase. What does that look like?
Well, here the primary challenge shifts. It becomes about scaling the incredibly complex digital ZAX system while maintaining absolute operational consistency and efficiency across the board. You're operating at scale now. And critically, this stage absolutely requires integrating progressive technologies, specifically machine learning and artificial intelligence, AI, to implement sophisticated analytics and predictive capabilities.
So AI becomes essential to manage the complexity at scale.
Exactly. That integration of AI is the precursor to achieving true predictive revenue management. The strategic focus in the fly stage shifts completely from simply acquiring customers to having total contract value visibility across the entire portfolio and achieving consistently high net revenue retention through proactive means. Hashtag 5.2, AI-driven predictive renewal management.
Okay, once an organization reaches that fly stage, how does AI fundamentally change the game in terms of retention and that relationship orchestration we talked about?
It allows for genuine forecasting and proactive intervention. It shifts customer management from, reactive firefighting when a customer complains to truly predictive orchestration. AI algorithms can analyze vast data sets, historical usage patterns, contract renewal behaviors across segments, support interaction history, sentiment analysis to predict renewal likelihood with extremely high accuracy, and often months in advance of the actual renewal date, giving you time to act.
So we're moving way beyond those static customer health scores, which might have just relied on predefined rules about, say, login frequency or basic usage volume. This sounds much more dynamic.
Oh, completely. Modern AI-driven customer health scoring continuously adapts. It integrates multiple, diverse behavioral data points, deep feature usage trends, which features are sticky, sentiment analysis derived from all communication logs, email, chat, support tickets, and even subtle payment behaviors or delays. This comprehensive, real-time approach detects churn risks much earlier, much more accurately, allowing for strategic, timely interventions before the customer is already mentally checked out.
Yeah, an excellent example cited in the sources was the use of AI-powered conversation intelligence. This kind of system can analyze support tickets and chat logs to detect subtle dissatisfaction trends or pinpoint the specific root cause of service disengagement before the issue escalates into an angry call to cancel.
Exactly. And that analysis immediately triggers proactive intervention workflows for the customer success manager or the account team. It directs their attention precisely where it's needed most. And that capability really is the ultimate operational validation of outcome-based selling. Think about it. If a customer is beginning to disengage manifested by low usage of key features or negative sentiment detected by the AI is essentially flagging that they are likely failing to realize the promised value or outcome. AI-driven monitoring detects this failure early, allowing a provider to proactively step in and reinforce the delivery of the agreed-upon outcome. In a way, churn prevention itself becomes the ultimate outcome as a service delivered by AI.
That's a powerful way to put it. Using AI to guarantee the guarantee.
In essence, yes, hashtag 5.3, scaling a JACOS operating model.
The success of all this predictive intelligence, however, it hinges entirely on one critical factor: a unified and robust data strategy. Without clean data, the AI is basically useless, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely. It must be built upon a foundation of clean, comprehensive, accessible data. Every single operational system, the CRM, the CPQ platforms, the contract management tools, the usage metering systems, the customer success platforms, finance systems, all of them must feed high-quality, standardized data into this unified data layer. That's what provides the intelligence required for accurate predictive forecasting. Seamless, standardized integration across the entire technology stack is absolutely essential for the fluid, dynamic, and incredibly data-intensive nature of ZES operations at scale. Data silos will kill you here.
Okay, and once you have that clean data layer, machine learning enables highly targeted action, moving past those generic email campaigns we all get.
Yes, precisely. Machine learning models can perform sophisticated behavioral segmentation. They can group customers into dynamic categories like retention-prone superstars, high-growth expansion potential, or immediate risk red flag based on complex patterns in utilization and sentiment. This segmentation allows the revenue team to automate highly specific retention strategies. You can deliver hyper-targeted, personalized communication and offers that resonate with each segment's specific situation. This significantly increases the effectiveness of intervention efforts, ensuring your valuable human resources are focused only on the most valuable opportunities or the highest priority risks.
Much more efficient use of time and resources.
Much more, and more effective.
So what does this all mean for the executive leading this charge? What's the big picture takeaway?
It means we are building and scaling a highly complex, interconnected digital operating model. A model where technology is not just supporting the commercial process, it is effectively the operational code that governs it end to end. Outro.
Wow. This deep dive into the commercial imperative of ZAS has been a necessary examination of the next era of revenue generation. We've seen pretty clearly that ZAF isn't just a product evolution. It's a complete commercial restructuring around continuous value realization. And that demands immense technological and cultural change across the entire organization.
That's right. To truly succeed in this new economy, organizations must embrace three core strategic imperatives. First, achieving commercial model maturity, progressing steadily up that spectrum to hybrid and ultimately outcome-based contracts, where pay is tied strictly to achieved verifiable results. Second, undertaking operational reengineering, transforming quote-to-cash from a linear, sequential flow into a continuous, technologically governed cyclical system, one capable of handling complex, code-based contracts and high-volume dynamic microbilling.
And third, enabling leadership transformation, with a CRO evolving decisively into the chief relationship orchestrator, someone who aligns all functions: sales, finance, customer success, operations, and measures, ultimate success primarily through net revenue retention and long-term customer value. As you said earlier, the ultimate objective is not just to sell an offer once, but to design a technology-orchestrated experience where value is perpetually realized by the customer, cementing that vital long-term partnership.
That's the goal: sustainable mutual value.
Okay, we established early on that consumption metering is the non-negotiable operational prerequisite for selling guaranteed outcomes. You simply have to measure usage to prove results. So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider. If data is truly the foundation of your future revenue streams, what specific granular data point must your organization begin tracking today that you are almost certainly ignoring or underutilizing right now to ensure it can successfully manage risk and prove verifiable value to your clients tomorrow? What's that missing piece of data?